We are roughly 6 weeks out from Germany's next federal election that will be held on the 23rd of February to decide the composition of the German Bundestag and, of course, in turn, its new government and future chancellor. Now, it's been a bit since I've done a video on this channel, so I wanted to give a general overview and update of the political situation in the country, taking a look at the polls both for the parties and for the leaders. As we can see here from the averages, not too much has changed over the past several weeks and even the past several months. Of course, we have 6 weeks left, so a lot can happen. There can always be scandals or surges by parties last minute, and so these numbers are not final. We still have some time left in the campaign, and I will cover it more closely as we get closer to election day. But as of now, the results are similar to what we've seen over the past several months. The CDU-CSU is clearly ahead in this campaign with around 32%. This is around what the CDU got under Angela Merkel in 2017. So if they were to achieve this result, they would make up all the losses they suffered at the last federal election in 2021 under Armin Laschet and would be, a strong first place party. The AfD has surged in some polls. There was an INSA poll that put them around 21% and a few others that put them over 20. And so there is some sign they might be reaching the 20% mark that they were at around that they reached in June of 2023. However, they have not, they've only surged around or increased rather around 1 point in the average, around 19%. But it is possible that by the time we have the election, the AfD could be at around 20% and end up getting 20 or 21% of the vote, which will be a major milestone for the party. They did win second place in the EU elections, but second place in the federal elections, and also winning over 20% would be a huge achievement for the party, or for any party. Even no party aside from the CDU-CSU or the SPD has ever won second place or over 20% in a federal election. The closest was, of course, the Greens, who got around 14.8 in the last election and came third place. The SPD is at around 16.2 or 16%. Now, some polls have had them higher. There has been, kind of an increase. They were at around 15% months prior, so there has been kind of a shift of around a point or two. But this is not really what they need to be, to be having in order for Olaf Scholz to remain as chancellor. Of course, if Olaf Scholz is, seen as more popular, more favorable than Friedrich Merz, then last minute we could see a shift in a lot of voters towards the SPD, and that could help them to maybe win second place. A first place victory for the SPD, I won't rule it out completely because they did pull it off in 2021 despite being in third place for almost 3 years. However, at this point I would say it is very unlikely. And I would say it's almost certain that the CDU-CSU will win first place. I would say it's very possible that the SPD overtakes the AfD. I could even see the AfD winning 20% and the SPD maybe winning 20-21%, depending on, if the CDU kind of drops the ball and does poorly in the campaign. They could also, take some of the votes, center-left voters away from the Greens, and we could see the SPD maybe at 21% and the Greens fall, back below. Alternatively, the Greens could overtake the SPD. I don't think that's very likely, but in several states and throughout the country, the Greens have managed to do that. And if their candidate, Robert Habeck, kind of presents himself as a more favorable person than Olaf Scholz, then potentially the Greens could overtake the SPD. But both of these center-left parties that are in the current government right now are at around 15% of the vote. They do form a significant bloc, together, but neither of them are really going to be vying for the chancellor position as of now. The AfD, even though they're in second place, like I said, has been isolated by many of the other political parties, and so pretty much the CDU-CSU is the only party with their leader, Friedrich Merz, that has really a viable option of forming the next government. The Alliance Sarah Wagenknecht has kind of struggled to get over 5% consistently in a lot of polls, and a lot of polls have shown them below the threshold, and so it is not certain that this party will actually manage to win seats in the Bundestag. They could fall below, and that would be a significant defeat for the party. They were able to win over 5% at the EU elections, win a few seats there, and also the 3 East German state elections, but of course the party does much better in the East than they do in the West, and so it will have to see whether or not they can do it. I believe they will be able to pull it off, probably narrowly around 5.5%. I do expect them to enter into the Bundestag, and of course if they don't, it doesn't mean that the party is dead politically. They are a new party, and so it might take them time to build up support, build up infrastructure, get candidates fielded and everything. However, this would be a big setback for Sarah Wagenknecht's party, but if they do pull it off, that will be a significant development. It will be a new party that has entered into the German Bundestag, the first since the AfD in 2017. You could argue that it is replacing Die Linke, but it is a new party anyway. Even if it shares some of the same policies and same members from Die Linke itself. Now, the FDP, which was a part of this current government, which had withdrawn, practically causing the collapse and bringing these elections forward, is around 3.5%. They managed to achieve 5% in the EU elections, and so I would say that up until a few months ago, it was possible for them to win over 5% and maintain representation in the Bundestag, but a lot of things have happened. There was a scandal revolving their withdrawal, or rather a planned withdrawal they had. Members of the FDP were planning to leave the coalition in a way that would benefit them, and that was kind of seen negatively by their coalition partners. That might have affected them. I'm not sure how much of that is actually being shown in the polls, or how much of that actually is due to that scandal. But we see the FDP is over a point below 5%. I would say it's very likely that they fall and lose representation. That will hurt them badly. They did recover in 2013. The FDP lost all representation in the Bundestag and was able to come back under their leader Christian Lindner in 2017. I do not know if they will be able to pull that off, and so if this happens, the party could become extinct politically. And Die Linke is somewhat different. Die Linke has some strengths that the FDP does not, because Die Linke is much more of a regional party. It has much more concentrated support in certain areas. So even if they both fall below, the FDP could go extinct. Die Linke will cease to exist as a major player in German federal politics, but they will still have significant support in states such as Thuringia, or even cities such as Leipzig and Berlin on the local level. And really what matters for Die Linke is whether or not they can win the 3 direct mandates. It's very likely they will fall below 5%. They did already in 2021, and now with a splinter group and even more pressure on the party, more scandals, and just more of an unfavorability of the party itself, I expect them to definitely not reach 5%. However, they could end up winning the 3 direct mandates, which we will take a look at the map a bit later. So as of now, we have this situation. The CDU-CSU is most likely going to form the next government, with the AfD being a strong opposition, and then we have kind of various left-wing parties vying for different positions in the Bundestag. Now, something very interesting has happened over the past several weeks, and that is there's been a lot of increased talk and kind of popularity around Alice Weidel. The media has covered this because there was a poll that came out that showed Alice Weidel actually ahead of Friedrich Merz in the candidate polling. Now, these polls don't really mean anything. They do mean something, but they're not really important as much as the party polling, because, of course, people in Germany do not vote for the candidates. Rather, they vote for the parties themselves. But what this does show is that Friedrich Merz has somewhat of a negative appeal in contrast to the CDU-CSU. So he's not a plus to the party. Rather, the party is winning despite him. He is very unpopular. In a lot of polls, he's even polling 10 points below his own party. And so what that shows is that the success of the CDU-CSU is happening because they're an opposition party, because of the party itself, and not really because of Friedrich Merz. And even Alice Weidel, who there's a 10 or over 10 point gap between the CDU-CSU and the AfD. However, Alice Weidel is neck and neck, or even ahead of Friedrich Merz in certain polls, and that shows that Weidel herself has made herself a very known personality in Germany, and very popular, at least popular as the AfD itself, but also has some appeal maybe to voters from other parties. And she is currently, in some polls, not all, but in a few polls, she is polling actually higher than the AfD itself. And then we can see Robert Habeck and Olaf Scholz are polling around the same rate as their parties themselves. This, of course, does not mean that Alice Weidel is going to be chancellor. This does not mean that she is actually more popular than Merz. These are, of course, a few polls, but this was a kind of a shock to Germany, because if you are the person that wants to become the chancellor of Germany, this is not where you want to be. Even if your party is winning, this is not really a good position to be in. And this shows that even though Merz is almost guaranteed to become chancellor, he's almost guaranteed to become an unpopular chancellor with an unpopular government on pretty much day one. And so that was an interesting development we had. And even if we take a look at the polls that include Sarah Wagenknecht, the 5-way race with all candidates, we can see that Alice Weidel and Friedrich Merz are very neck and neck. There was one poll from INSA. It had them both tied, and one poll from Wahlkreisprognose that had her 1 point behind. And so what this shows is that the candidate factor for the CDU-CSU is basically nullified or a negative, so they don't have a strong fit. We saw in some state elections, for example, in Hessen or in Schleswig-Holstein, the CDU-CSU had very popular candidates and was able to achieve 35-40%, far ahead of any other party. And what this is showing is that the CDU-CSU as a party is doing well, but it's not because of Merz, it's more in spite of him. And also Scholz and Habeck are not really breaking away, and what this shows is that even if Scholz is in line with the popularity of the SPD, in order for the SPD to win, Scholz would need to be significantly ahead of Merz in a lot of the polls, and that would kind of pressure a lot of voters last minute to say, we don't really trust the SPD or like the SPD, but we'll prefer Scholz over Merz, and so we'll vote for them to get him as chancellor. But of course, with that not being the case in the polls, I would expect that the candidate factor did not really play a role here in these elections. elections vital, of course. Even though she might be second or even first in some polls, the AFD has almost no chance of forming any kind of a government, and so they're kind of irrelevant. But it is symbolically, it is important for the AFD, and it is kind of a warning signal to the CDU. And then we see Sarah Wagenknecht around 10%, so she is also significantly higher than her party itself, almost double the support in some of the polls. Now, the last thing I want to look at is the map. Wahlkreisprognose does have a map based on the polls that they release, and I wanted to take a look at this to give an idea of what the situation is in the country for two reasons, just to kind of see geographically how Germany is divided politically, but also to look at the direct mandates for Die Linke to see where they need to win. Now, of course, with the CDU-CSU being in first place ahead of all the other parties, they are clearly dominating in their strongholds in the rural parts of the Rhineland, in Bavaria, where the CSU is super strong, and then, of course, the southwestern state of Baden-Württemberg. Those are all strongholds for the CDU, and even parts where that were, strongholds of the SPD, the CDU is winning, not by as much, but parts of Rhineland-Pfalz, parts of the southern part of Niedersachsen, Lower Saxony, centered around Hanover and some other cities, and of course the industrial Ruhr Valley region with cities such as Dortmund, Essen, Duisburg. Those are all SPD strongholds, and we see with the current map, the CDU is ahead of the SPD in a lot of those areas, and this shows how behind the SPD is in this election. And secondly, we can also see that the AFD is almost winning every East German East German district, East German Wahlkreis, and this is almost the exact map of the East and West divide during the Cold War between the Federal Republic of Germany in the West and the German Democratic Republic in the East. Of course, the AFD is able to, is ahead in some parts of the West where they're very strong, and there are some districts such as Leipzig and Potsdam, the major cities, where other parties are still ahead of the AFD in the East. But in general, the AFD is very strong and has almost the entirety country of the former East Germany cut out in blue, and then the West is dominated by the CDU with some SPD and Greens spread out. The Greens do pretty well in the cities such as Berlin. And the last thing I want to look at is the situation for Die Linke. Now, in order for Die Linke to maintain representation in the Bundestag, they need to win 3 seats. And I want to show everyone here what the possible seats are, what the combinations are. So the most likely one they have is Berlin, Treptow-Köpenick. This is the seat of Gregor Gysi. Now, he is an incumbent. He is a veteran politician. He's one of the most well-known from the Die Linke and its predecessor, the PDS. This seat is considered safe for Die Linke, and I expect him to maintain the seat, so that is a safe seat, but they need 2 more. Now, they have 2 more in Berlin they could likely win. Berlin-Lichtenberg was won by Gesine Lutsch. However, she is retiring. She is another veteran politician of the party. This has been a seat that's very strong for Die Linke. The CDU got very close there, and so I think that with Gesine Lutsch leaving, not having an incumbent there, even if it's a stronghold for the party, even if they put up a very I believe one of the party's leaders is running in that seat, I think it will be very difficult. I think they got very close, and the CDU got very close to winning in 2021. I think the CDU might pull it off, but it is kind of a toss-up. But I would say the CDU-CSU is a slight favorite. And Marzahn-Hellersdorf, this is the seat of Petra Pau, the vice president of the Bundestag from Die Linke. She lost her direct mandate in 2021, and if the CDU-CSU was able to win it then, I expect the CDU to win it next time. Even, Die Linke will probably do very well here, but they will fall short, and I would expect the CDU to win it. Another seat is Rostock, Landkreis Rostock, in the state of Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania. Here, Dietmar Bartsch, another veteran politician from Die Linke, is running. This is an urban seat. It is the city of Rostock, but it's not a huge city. They do have a mayor from Die Linke and a strong local city council branch from Die Linke. However, Dietmar Bartsch has never really gotten close to winning this district, and I expect that he will end up falling short. Now, we could see maybe a split in the vote. We could see maybe a 4-way race between the AFD, the CDU, the SPD, and Die Linke, and we could see maybe Bartsch pull it off if the Die Linke invests a lot into this region, puts some money, and really campaigns hard. But as of now, I would say that this is probably the AFD, the CDU, SPD might, any of those 3 are going to win. I would say, of course, likely as the map says, the AFD. Die Linke could pull it off, but I'd say this one is actually less likely than Berlin-Lichtenberg. I would say the most likely is Köpenick, Lichtenberg, and the last one is the Wahlkreis in the middle of Thuringia, which is Erfurt, Weimar, and the suburbs of Weimar. Now, this is a very important district because it is the capital of the state of Thuringia, and Bodo Ramelow, who is the former governor from Die Linke of this state, will be running for the Bundestag for a direct mandate. Now, Die Linke has been able to win this district in the past. I believe they won it in 2009, And as of now, I would say it would be very difficult for them to win this seat. However, Bodo Ramelow was a very popular governor, even more popular than his party itself, and I would say that he has a very good shot of winning this seat. I would say that this is probably the second most likely for, to flip for Die Linke, and of course Ramelow himself is the one that's going to make all the difference. And so what they would need is Ramelow in Erfurt, Gysi, and then the candidate in Berlin-Lichtenberg. If they win those three, they will win representation in the Bundestag. So that's the way the map might look. Of course, we will get more updates when we have more polls and stuff. So that's going to be it for this video. I wanted to give an update on the political situation. I will start doing some more videos as we get closer. I believe I will do another video shortly on Austria and probably upload that sometime tomorrow. So but that's going to be it for this video. If you guys like it, please do like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you all for watching.